Also, I'd like to, if I could get a couple minutes, a few opening remarks, but just want to say good afternoon. It's almost surreal being back here at the Combine. This is, for a lot of people, it was the last normal experience we had before the pandemic hit. It was you think about a lot of things that's changed in the world and a lot of things that stayed the same. For me, personally, the last time I was here, I was working with San Francisco coming out for Super Bowl. Now I'm here leading his organization in Minnesota. You think about the things that have stayed the same. One of the things I appreciate about the Combine is the relationships. You get in town and you get that Combine bro hug or a hug from anybody. And, that's the thing that I think about the most when it comes to the Combine, that we all compete at the highest level. But at the end of the day, we appreciate each other, we appreciate the opportunity we have in front of us, and are excited to be in each other's company. Since I last spoke to you guys, Kevin's been in the building. And so, you think about that process and what happens. You have this detailed process, and ultimately you're making a guess as the person that you're going to be working with and sharing that hallway with. And, man, I can't tell, every day you feel so good about the decision you made. Just learning more about him, the little things. When we first met, when he got to Minnesota, and they were preparing his day for him, and I was asking everybody, hey, are you going to make him wear a suit all day like that? I feel like that's not a good idea. And so we meet down at the garage lobby, and he sees me pull up in sweats, and he's like, you wear sweats? Like, me too. It was like the little things. And so, when you're in that process, you want to make sure you've got the major things covered in terms of how he views team building and philosophy and vision. But then those little things are kind of cool to learn about somebody and figure out as you go along. And the collaboration has been incredible. He is a consistent person. He's positive, competitive, driven, thoughtful. It's been great sharing the hallway with him, and I'm excited to continue. We've also hired a great coaching staff. I used to have this thing in college called good friend theory, where you bring around your friends from home, around your friends from college, and there's something that binds them all together, right? You could remove yourself, and they're already friends, and they're close. Sometimes they're better friends with each other than they are with you by the end of it. And I think there's something to be said about like good coach theory, because the people that are in his orbit are incredible. We immediately got along, immediately collaborated. We went to a Timberwolves game, and it felt like we were longtime coworkers. So I'm excited about what we're building. Excited to be here and honestly meet and learn about these young men and fulfill their NFL dreams. And we're excited to get going. Without any questions?
Schedule now as the guy up at the podium.
Yeah, it's a little different. I didn't do this very much back then. I used to come into town, plan my vendor meetings, have a couple things. Honestly, I'd kind of get in here, be in and out in 2 or 3 days, because people don't realize this is a very critical part of this NFL schedule. So when you're not up here, I'm in my room working and kind of getting ready for things. But it's great. Everything's a challenge. Everything's new, and that's kind of what I'm interested and love about this job. So excited to do it.
As you evaluate the cap situation and try to free up some space ahead of free agency, what's that process been like, and how valuable has it been to have Rob in the building with you on that aspect?
Yeah, Rob is incredible, and one of the reasons why I wanted this job, not just because obviously they wanted to choose me, but there's so many great people in this building, and Rob's one of them. But when you talk about the cap situation, the NFL team building it's a big puzzle, right? We're trying to figure it out together, how to sustainably put together a championship team, and salary cap is one of the challenges and obstacles that we face in that puzzle. We're working together night and day to figure out the best way to put our team forward.
How difficult of a puzzle is it?
It's funny. I have an economics background, and I know I say the word economics, and everybody probably cringes because nobody liked economics and when they learned it. But you talk about economics, it's optimizing utility, right? It's a very simple equation, and there's constraints that you have, and you solve for those constraints. The NFL puzzle is different because you don't know what that equation looks like. You don't know exactly what those constraints look like. So there's a little bit of art, there's a little bit of science, and that's what makes the puzzle fun. Honestly, that's what drew me to the sport, and it's why I think all of us love competing at the highest level.
When you're doing interviews with the athletes, what are certain things that you're looking for in them as men and not just athletes?
Sure. You want to be intentional about how you use that space in general. Be really detailed and thorough about what you're actually capable of figuring out in an 18-minute setting. it's like any interview process, right? I think Google's done a bunch of research about the interview and it not being the best predictor of what happens afterwards. You want to try and create as many real-life, on-the-job experiences as you can in that environment. So we try and do that and try and just see what it would be like to work with that person 10 hours a day for 4 years, 5 years, or however many years it comes to. But just really learn about what's their sense of purpose in football. How do they view their routines and how that connects to what they are on the field, and just the influences in their life and how they see themselves.
Unique path to GM. How do you feel there's a heightened level of scrutiny around the things you do, and how do you block out that noise?
I don't know that anybody holds themselves to a higher standard than myself, so I don't really focus on what other people say about my background. I think you'd probably ask people in Minnesota that came in with a preconceived notion about me. They'd probably tell you it's a little different than that. I've had some amazing teachers. That's what got me here, and so I've learned from an amazing amount of people. And so I think I combine their best experience set, and so in that sense, that's what I'm facing. That's what I'm about. And I don't really focus too much on the outside noise. I put a lot of pressure on myself. We have grand ambition, and we're trying to work every day to get to it.
How has Ryan Grigson kind of helped you run the operations?
Yeah, RG. Man, he's a special guy. He is somebody I connected with in Cleveland, and you talk about somebody perception versus reality. When they first hired him, I was, like anybody else, I'd maybe heard some other things, and we have these Thursday meetings, and we just talk about life and the process, and he is one of the most introspective people I've ever met. So really hones in on what happened to him and ways to help me in the future. So when he connected with me, that was in my beginning journey in sort of leadership position. And everything he told me came true, right? And so I helped build my processes to be able to do this job. So some of the transition hasn't been as bad because he prepared me for that. And so, just in addition, he's a talented evaluator, and I want the most people around me that are, great in different skill sets. My job is to combine them all into one decision to help the team. But I want to combine as many talented people as I can. And he's a talented evaluator, a talented friend, somebody who adds to our culture, just an incredible addition.
How would you describe his role? Is he like the number 2 in the front office, or how would you kind of describe that?
Oh, man, everybody's always so on details and stuff like that. I don't look at it that way. I came from a business structure. My former career was very flat, and we just got as many talented people in the room as possible. Same thing we did in Cleveland. That's how I view it here. He's extremely senior. He has my ear at any given moment, and he uses it. He's a very passionate person. If he's got an opinion on a player, he's going to let you know it. But he is one of those people in our exec group, and excited to have him.
What are some of your favorite things when you watch, Kirk Cousins film and off the field as well?
Sure, he's an incredibly consistent passer. I don't think people realize that essentially every play has kind of a result built into it, right? Based on factors that he can't control. And I think what you know about Kirk is when the odds are shifted in his favor, he gets the most out of it, right? And I think people don't appreciate that skill enough. But he's incredibly consistent, incredibly accurate thrower, tough. He's durable. He plays every game. He stands in there and takes those hits when those throws are a little bit harder to come by. He's an incredible player, really cerebral. He's one of the first phone calls I made. And one of the funny things I love about being in this job is you come in with a preconceived notion about NFL players, and then you get here and they're just so different than you. I mean, they're all just so talented. I text all my Wall Street buddies all the time, like they would all take our jobs, just so we're clear. And so Kirk is no different, just incredibly talented, smart, detailed. The level of detail of things we talked about was incredible. I won't share that with you guys, but he's an incredible person. I'm excited to work with him.
Some of the other personalities that you've met, the fun, the exciting guys that you've met.
As players or who else?
As people, the players, yeah.
Man, tough question. It's like asking my top 5 favorite rappers. Some of the first people I met when I was in San Francisco, I taught player finance to those guys. So that was cool because you're getting them at such a young age, and something that I think is so important. You want to make sure that these guys set themselves up for their futures. And so I got them in a place that, I don't want to say it was vulnerable, but it was like we could share things in a pretty frank and stark way. Eric Armstead is somebody has been great to me in my career. Jimmy Ward, guys like that. Jadavion and Clowney. I mean, there's so many guys. Sheldon Day. I can't tell you how much, the biggest surprise to me has been the relationships from this business, the players, the front office, the coaches. I'm so grateful for them and continue to do them.
You spent a lot of time at the 49ers during some tumultuous times. How did that shape getting into this role and how you're going to look forward at it?
Sure. Great to see you. It's been a while. Honestly, so I started 3 months after a Super Bowl, and I left a few months after a Super Bowl. So seeing that path from where it was to where it went to and then it come back is, again, those are lessons that few people get to see. You get to see kind of, in my old job, it was trying to calculate the odds of things and things like that, but actually getting to see them in real life, see them happen in real time, just something that, again, I'm gratefully indebted that I saw that and learned from. I always took everything as a challenge. So a lot of times when things aren't going well on the field, I think people have the urge to point around, and I always pointed the finger inward and try to find my ways to help the team as best as I could. So I'd search out other people. I got really, I was talking to a friend, Josh Williams from the 49ers the other day, and we were just catching up and telling stories. And it's like, you were pretty, I was in the bunker for a couple of years because I don't like losing, and I kind of wanted to just do everything I could to figure that out. And honestly, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I solved any riddle. Part of that was Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, and a big part of that, but just being able to see that up close and see what a championship standard looks like, it's something that I'll take with me forever.
Kwesi, is Daniil Hunter one of those players you've spoken to, and where's he at in his recovery, and then is he also part of your long-term plans?
Daniil was actually one of the first people I spoke with. Really good player, incredible person. We were talking about traveling. Again, one of those things you love about NFL relationships. He was traveling somewhere that I had been, and we caught up about that. But he is, he's a really good football player, and to build championship teams, you need a lot of really good football players. So, he's somebody that we want to work with going forward, and we're just kind of excited to talk through all our possibilities with that.
Is that in his recovery right now?
Not specifically. I know generally, but I don't want to speak too out of turn with that.
The NFL said they're not requiring the Wonderlic test this year, so I'm wondering how much should you factor that into evaluations in the past, and what other sort of direct assessments do you use? I know there's a few other different tests that teams use with players, so I'm wondering where you fall on that. Sure.
I'm a data guy, so I don't ever want you to remove data from our data sets. That's just kind of how I go. I want to add, never take away. But, the NFL, the Wonderlic test is interesting. They actually gave it to us when we went to San Francisco and, applied for jobs. But it's a reasoning test. I don't know that it's necessarily correlated precisely to what happens on the field. It's more pattern recognition and things like that. So I do think some of the new tests that have come out are pretty good. But the Wonderlic's not a bad test, and also probably just shows some level of preparation and care, no different than anything else. But ultimately, whatever challenges or whatever tests we're allowed to use or weren't allowed to use, we'll figure out the best way forward to give ourselves an advantage.
Is there a specific one that you're going to use, instead of the Wonderlic, to replace that in your data set?
Do you work with one of those companies? No.
I went to Media.
Okay. No, they're all really good. They all have their pluses. They all look at certain different things. I'll go talk to Mark and see if we can't get them all.
There haven't been many black head coaches and GMs hired over the last 20 years. When you got the call, what was your immediate reaction, and what is some of that? Is there any pressure on the job when you accepted?
Sure. The reaction when I got the call, it's a little surreal, I'll be honest, because you live in both worlds where you're confident in your abilities and your ability to learn and grow. But when that call gets made, you understand and appreciate the odds that you're facing. Not just in a general basis, but also in a specific basis, being the color of my skin. You talk about that burden. I grew up in a predominantly white area. I went to a predominantly white college. I worked in a predominantly white field, so I felt that burden my entire life. And I've tried to use it as a positive, though, because I know a lot of these conversations they'll have or the exposure they have to me will be their only exposure. And I view that as my ability to help the next person after me, to kind of open their mind and not maybe treat them with bias or anything like that. So, that's something I live with and work with, but I view it as a positive in my sense and continue to do so.
You talked a lot about using data. How do you guys use data, and how has that helped you evaluate particularly specialists and special teams players?
Wow, specialist question. I like that. Punters are people. Look, data is really important, but I think people sometimes lose the sense of being open-minded about what data is. Data is observations. Data is noticing how I walk into a room. Data is also a number, and we use all those things at our disposal. With special teams players, it actually is really important, right? Because you got to be able to contextualize a lot of things. Distance kick for a field goal kicker, outcomes on a punt, and things like that. So there's something that we actually rely on a lot, but with everything. It's just one information source. Then you have your other information sources, you combine them. And at the end of the day, when these things don't agree, that's the call to process. Let's get in a room and figure out this, and because great decisions are made when you learn. Decisions are about learning environments. And so I think data helps in that process.
Time for two more.
Kirk does when things are shaped in his favor.
Yep.
More broadly, not about him, but about quarterback in general.
Yep.
Isn't it about what happens when things don't go in their favor because so infrequently a play pans out as it's drawn up?
I wouldn't say so infrequently. Kevin might disagree with you on that one, but look, I think one of the best things I was ever taught by Gary Cobb. He grew up in my area, and he talked about quarterback needing to know when to be Superman and when to be Clark Kent. And so a lot of times you can actually be bad, being too much Superman, right? So it's not just what happens when the play breaks down, but your ability to get us to the next down. As a quarterback, you hold all of our hopes, our dreams, our livelihoods with the ball. And so we want somebody to take that risk, but also understand the importance of taking smart decisions. So it's just combining all that together and figuring out what gets you the best way forward.
Last question, Kwesi. Last year, after y'all drafted Anthony Schwartz, you talked about how prospects were similar to stocks. Can you just expand on that a little bit and what you meant by that?
Sure. And look, I probably misspoke on that. You don't want to compare people to financial assets, and if I spoke on that in that way, I would probably apologize to Anthony and anybody else. But in terms of ultimately, you're trying to analyze something you don't know, right? You're trying to guess. As an interviewer, Mark Wilf is trying to guess what I'm going to be like as a general manager, just like I'm trying to guess what Anthony Schwartz is going to be like as a player. And you have information. You get to watch his film. You get to watch his testing. You get to hear from his college coach. And ultimately, you're just putting that together just like anything else and trying to figure out your best way forward. You've only got so many bullets, right? You've only got so many first-round picks, second-round picks, and money. So you want to use all your best bullets on the things that are the most certain and come out in that way. But ultimately, it's just putting together a plan. I see Andrew Berry in the crowd right now, the maestro of it all, somebody who's meant a lot to me. And these are the conversations we have together and we had about Anthony. And again, it's great being up here. I thank you for your time, and I'm sure I'll get to meet you guys shortly.